I'm here with Leszek Jazdzewski. Leszek, how are you doing, my man?
Hey, good morning, Ricardo. So great to be back, and so great to be back on your sides of the show. And yes, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. We have a lot of things to talk about. One more year. It started in a very, very peculiar way. So I'm going to ask you the perspective from Central Eastern Europe, from Poland. What was your assessment of all this craziness that we saw in Davos and even before that? Greenland and the troops moving to Greenland and the European Commission and the European Union finally getting a little bit of courage to stand up to a bully. What was your take on this very, very strange period for the beginning of the year?
Yeah. What a way to start the year, right? I think to really get into action. And honestly, I do think that many people were sort of. It is like this slow motion crash which is happening in your like when you are running and the truck is going on the other side of the road, sort of thing. This is how I think how it felt watching this, because I don't think that no one really thought that US can be stopped militarily, or it's going to be stopped even by Denmark or any other European powers. But I think it was unimaginable was the sort of the day after this, and is it gonna be NATO? And it seems like the most from in some ways it would be for transatlantic community, which I don't think really exists anymore. That would be a blow much bigger in a way than Russian invasion of Ukraine, because this would united transatlantic community, and that would completely destroy them. And I think like, first of all, I would be surprised if Trump didn't do something else. Maybe not on Greenland issue. I don't know, because maybe that seemed too costly to him. I don't think that anyone really know why he decided to step back. There might be a lot of different issues on. I think Europeans like to think that because it will, we made a tough response. That could be true, partially. Could be for internal political reasons as well. And yes, and I was observing also very different reactions of Europeans. So countries on the eastern flank were still trying to grab US and be close to US. Countries like France, Germany were, I think, much more muscular in the response. And of course, Nordics. So I'm glad that Europe stood together, and I think that's the way to go forward as long as we can. And maybe that's the way to work with the bully. You don't show weakness. You show strength, and that's what works. How are what are your feelings? How have you framed this issue for yourself?
Well, I wasn't in a room with Mark Rutte and Donald Trump when they talked, but one thing I can tell you, Leszek, from my extensive knowledge of U.S. politics and U.S. society, coming not only for the fact that I live there, but I follow pretty closely what are the main political concerns in the United States. And one of them, it's not to have U.S. soldiers coming back to their home country in boxes. And I don't know if just the fact that we had 200 people, I know it sounds ridiculous. And actually here in my home country, I've been picking up some fights in the media regarding that, because as you said, there's this perception that, if the United States, if they have a aircraft carrier, that's enough to take all Greenland. That is not 100% true. I'm sure that, of course, with air power, the U.S. would be in advantage. But what are going to bomb in Greenland? There's nothing to bomb in Greenland. So any kind of military takeover by land would have been received, this is my belief, would have been received with a typical dogfight between NATO soldiers. It's ridiculous to say this, but that is the truth. I think that most than anything really scared the Trump administration. I don't think economic sanctions and tariffs and all the bluster from the Europeans on that particular point, saying that we are against bullies, and finally we are against bullies, and with the help of Carney also coming here at Davos and having his speech. And I'm going to ask what you thought about that one. This not a transition but a rupture. But I think it was actually the fear, the perspective of that there would be some kind of shooting war in Greenland, because the US, they don't react well to that, and they wouldn't react even less well with Greenland, because one thing is to have soldiers killed in Venezuela or in Abbottabad or in Nigeria, but in Greenland makes no sense to the US electorate, to the US population. So again, I was not in a room, but I think that could have played a role. You want to jump in here?
Well, that's interesting perspective, because I think even Europeans mostly didn't expect that the sort of hard power issue would be that important. But I do think that the Rutte conversation was sort of decisive, and I think maybe also it is like Donald Trump wants to have his cake and eat it, and once he sees that once he is going to eat the cake, it's not going to be there anymore. Maybe he sort of had to calculate that, okay, maybe this time he's not really about actually achieving anything. He's very much about declaring and about showing that he is, running the show and doing things, and he moves to the next one. So,
absolutely.
So yeah, if maybe not Greenland, maybe Iran, or maybe Cuba, or maybe he can score the goal, somewhere else. I do think that's one thing that I'll be also. I know that this is Liberal Europe, not Liberal America podcast, but I'm thinking, how much do you think his actions can be also driven by the fear that he's going to lose heavily in November, and he's looking for ways to take the sort of attentions from, some people say, Epstein files, I would say from inflation, cost of living. Obviously, now we also have this Minneapolis shooting again, I would say, shooting an innocent person. It's not like his numbers are really bad, and we are so obsessed with Trump, like being omnipresent and omnipotent, but he's not. He's basically a very bad, very weak president who, because of his autocratic and very substandard way of conduct, he's achieving perhaps more on the media side than most of the presidents, but it doesn't mean that he's popular or effective in any way. So he might lose heavily in November, and if he loses Congress, then obviously he's going to be in a very tough spot. So I wonder, how do you think these internal issues play out in his actions externally?
That's a great point. And actually, and dear listener, me and Leszek, we didn't prepare this conversation. We're just going here on the flow of just two people talking. Is that exactly? We have our podcast somewhere in September where we're going to promote the Freedom Games. I'm very, very, very scary that this summer in the United States, something terrible is going to happen. He's been threatening to call what is called the Insurrection Act. He's been saying to Reuters that he doesn't think that there should be any elections. They're trying to get access to voter rolls. They are doing this sham investigation about 2020 election that was stolen, and this one is going to be stolen also. But we'll leave that for later. But yes, I agree with you. This is all him just trying to escape forward, meaning he's just trying to survive one more cycle where things are completely crumbling around him. What we're seeing in Minnesota, what we saw in Davos, what we're seeing also, his erratic behavior, it's all because he's feeling trapped. I agree with you. The polls clearly show that he's underwater. The things are not getting better. He promised that he was going to solve 1 million problems. He's not solving. He's just creating new ones. So that's where we are. All right, changing subject, because as you said, this is a podcast not only focused on the Trump administration.
Yeah.
Good for us. But tell me about Prime Minister Carney, because I was quite influenced with his vision, with this approach, which is we're not coming back to the old world order. This is a rupture. Yeah. The middle powers have to get together. Tell us what you thought about that one.
No, I really sympathized with what he said. I think actually the way he said it, what makes a great speech. I do like to think about it a lot and, read and watch. And, it's especially tough for the guy who is in the position of power to make influential speech. Because most of the time, what you get written by your advisors is bland, they're talking points, you don't want to please this guy. You're basically going for the bare minimum to get your talking points across.
Mm-hmm.
There are times when, the times of rupture, when even the politicians in power can make a great speech, which is also substantial, and they are showing they are taking some risks and willing to take risks and willing to lose something in order to say something which is meaningful. And I do think that the way that he got a standing ovation, which is a rare thing in Davos, and he's just Prime Minister of Canada. It's not like that he was Putin or Trump, right? So it's not necessarily being number one person. Of course, he has his personal charisma and standing because being the governor of Bank of England and so on. He's basically perhaps very much a Davos persona, but there's a lot of competition for these sort of speeches. And I think he spoke about issues on everyone's mind, and he managed to frame them in a way which is both realistic but also connected to the values and offering a way forward.
Mm-hmm.
And he not just said it, but he also did it, going to China, it's not like I'm a fan of going to China, but he's trying to leverage his position, and he's saying like, listen, there was this hypocrisy, and the way that he connected to Havel, that was extraordinary, because he basically, I think that was what sort of captured the audience, is that he sort of showed that what we believed in was basically a sort of hypocrisy which worked until it didn't, and what is the cost of it. And then he showed courage to say that the emperor has no clothes, and also offer the way forward. So yeah, that was powerful. What are your thoughts?
Well, before that, let me ask you then about this middle powers and the fact that the European Union, we continue to have a model that is not the perfect one. In a way, I'm a federalist. I do weep for this lack of unity in the European Union, but it is the system that we have. But for example, when we see things like Germany and Italy still, trying to get it both ways, Macron has been quite vocal, has been leading the charge, let's call it that way. I saw that the president of Poland was very upset with the words from Trump regarding the troops, the NATO troops in Afghanistan, and that was positive for him to also show his displeasure. And I know that it's been a little bit of a shift in Poland, where you guys are also saying that this is completely untenable to have a president like this. So I'll give you my opinion in a second. What do we think then will be the next steps for this European Union project in this middle powers Carney doctrine that we have to get together?
Yeah, so I would love to see EU as a superpower, and I think we have a sort of potential or cards that we could use to do it. The thing is, as you rightly observed, that still most countries, especially those who are like big powers on the European continent, but would be considered middle powers at best on the world stage, are still thinking they can play their own game, and of course there are diverging interests. It's not like suddenly we have like one demos, right, out of 27 nations. Yes. It is like we do have fewer and fewer options, and I think there was a time when people thought, okay, we can milk this cow, which is EU, and do our own way. Some countries like go as far as making deals with Russia and China, like Hungary. Poland is obviously always choosing Washington over Brussels or other European capitals. And I do think that even for the right wingers, especially for Trump supporters, MAGA movement, there was this sort of wake up call, like you can lose heavily politically, because obviously I don't think they care about the nation's interests or about liberal world order and stuff like this. But they can see we can lose with this guy. We can go down with him, and that's what's really scary for them. For Le Pen's, for Farage's, for Meloni is obviously something of a different sort. even for Polish right-wing party, it's like, well, like 15% of people in Poland supported this Greenland grab and 64 were against. So it is like a wake-up call, and also a very damaging thing for US. And the question is, what sorts of conclusions you draw from this? Because you see a lot of like pro-Russian supporters who are very happy that America is going down, And the question is whether European federalists or just pro-European camp can sort of take over and show like, okay, this is the way forward. We can trust that being part of EU also means something for your security, that integration can get us further. And, and we are discussing Mercosur, which is bad for someone, for some farmers somewhere. We don't think in European terms. So I don't think I hope it's a step forward. But honestly, I think we need much bigger crisis than that, like nature crisis, like total nature collapse, that we perhaps start to frame this differently. What do you think? Maybe I'm too pessimistic.
No. I think you're right on spot, particularly also, and we can get into it if you have time, which is always this focus on economic issues from the European Union, Mercosur, now with India. But also, we have to concern about the fact that we need to be a superpower also in other dimensions, not just the economic one. So I'm totally agreeing with you on that one. What I'll say, Leszek, and I know you're sensitive to this, is that please don't make me agree with the extreme right wing in Europe. It was FPÖ in Austria. It was Rassemblement National in France. It was AfD in Germany that were actually the ones that are like, are we kidding here? We need to stand up against the bully. We need to stand up against this, kind of real politic where us Europeans are told what to do by the Americans. And it just blew my mind, because I know what is the plans for the European Union of these three parties, or the party in Spain or the party in Portugal. What is for law and order party in Poland or in Czech Republic. And please don't have the extreme right wing leading the way on what should be European Union superpower in the world. So
absolutely right. Yeah.
So that's my take on it. I'm totally agree with you. We have to be a superpower in more just economic. We are buying time, and actually, I said this here also on Portuguese television. I was asked by CNN Portugal to have an opinion, and I was like, "We're just buying time because we need 2 years to at least have more weapons to defend ourselves, and also with our friends in Ukraine. Naturally, we need 2 more years to try to organize, like for example, the Draghi recommendations are there being set." We need 2 more years then to also wait for the midterm elections in the United States, because with the Democrats in power, maybe they will have more support for Ukraine, for example, with weapons and with military intelligence. So we're buying time. But while we're buying time, we have to fortify that idea that you just mentioned, which is Europe needs to be a superpower. And the superpower is exactly all these middle powers together in a collective, that then we can step up to China, or we step up to the United States, or we step up to Russia.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So with this one, we have a couple more minutes. We want to talk about the podcast itself. Naturally, let's start with
baby.
Yeah. Well, we can talk for hours, you and I. But we'll shorten it here. But let's talk about our podcast. So we had another very successful panel at Freedom Games, and I'm going to later on in the year put a little bit of a snippet from what we did in Freedom Games in Łódź, which is always amazing. But this year, with all this volatility, with all this unknowns, I think it's quite hard for us to have this through line of conversations on the podcast. But what would be the things that you would like to focus this year for our listeners?
Well, first of all, obviously, I want everyone here to know that we are going to be on stage at the Freedom Games somewhere between October 23rd and 25th this year. Tech for Humanity, it's the main issue of this edition, but I'm sure we will find ways to be on a big stage with certainly very thought-provoking concepts, and we're gonna have so much fun with the audience, and hopefully some of our listeners will be able to catch it live. So yeah, the world is in flux, but some things are now going to be pre-booked and certain, and this is our presence at the Freedom Games. Yeah, and as for the podcast, I think I will. Well, it's difficult to record anything these days about the current events, right? Especially if it involves Trump or security or Europe, but I'm definitely going to record at least one podcast which would, get deeper into European sovereignty, the sort of this middle power issue. I'm sure you might be interested to do it as well, but I'm sure we will find different speakers who can. I think it's going to be basically the driving issue of this year, right? In many ways, but of course, a lot of things can happen. I would certainly would like to have at least one conversation about what's happening in France, because I think it's important that we don't lose touch with one of the most important countries in the European Union, and they are in a very they're basically in a mess, and I would like to sort of understand not just economic side, but also political, social side. Certainly, I will record something on Hungary because they have elections. I'm sure you'll be interested too.
Yeah.
We just make sure we don't overlap on this one. But that's a huge issue. That's a huge issue for the whole EU to have a country potentially coming back, and it's a question how they're going to come back, and if a lot of options. Thing I would like to. Well, it's not the sort of European issue, but it's a human rights issue. I'm very concerned with Iran, and I'm thinking whether I might get some activists. Even I'm starting to get in touch. The problem is they're also afraid about their families back home, that it's not easy to find a person who can don't speak anonymously on the podcast. Yeah,
that's a great topic, Leszek. Thank you for doing that, man.
Yeah, lots of issues. Anyway, tell me about your plans.
Well, from my side, I have at least two main areas that we're going to get to in the first part of the year, which is the Draghi report and what should be the industry transition in the European Union with the single market and with companies and SMEs, and the application of all recommendations that came from Draghi report for us to be more competitive. I'm going to also focus on the digital sphere, particularly with political debate online, which is something that I care a lot. And I have some very good conversations ready where we go into that. And then unfortunately, Leszek, the transatlantic relationship. Yeah. Like I just said a minute ago, I'm not hopeful that things will get better. I think things are going to get worse. I may have to ask you to come to the podcast now and then to have like emergency podcasts about what we're going to see. And also some of my friends in the United States, I'm planning to have them back, and other people in the European Union that I know that they care about this. I will try not to bore our listeners to tears with this topic, but I think it's really, really important, not only for our friends in the United States, or for example, as you said, our friends in Iran, for the European Union, to show that we're paying attention, that we are at the side of the Democrats and the liberals and the people fighting for, a better country, even if it is as ridiculous as it sounds in the United States of America. So, but again, I'm not going to make 30 podcasts about this. I promise that to our listeners.
No, of course. I'm sure that also there's going to be a lot of things that will come up on as we go, and that will demand our attention. So I'm sure that there will be some themes that would be present, but it doesn't mean that we are going to repeat ourselves, right? It never
Indeed. Well, it's not the end of history, like Fukuyama mentioned at all. So we're in a new chapter of our history. The man is Leszek Jazdzewski.
And Ricardo Silvestre.
It's always great to talk to you. It's such a pleasure to pick your mind and then to have this kind of light conversation to our listeners. I hope you, dear listener, also like it. So Leszek, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you, Ricardo. I like dynamics when we are, both on the show. That's so much fun.
This is all for now. I'll be back soon with more podcasts. You can always visit the website liberalforum.eu to know more about the activities of the European Liberal Forum. So until the next episode, let's keep making the world a better place.
You were listening to the Liberal Europe podcast by the European Liberal Forum. This podcast was co-financed by the European Parliament.